right, hello. Welcome everyone to Wayfarers Chapel, the National Memorial to Emanuel Swedenborg. I'm Reverend David Brown, Director of Ministry here, and proud to have with us Denise McDermott. She's a child psychiatrist in Redondo Beach practicing. Well, before we have her presentation, I'll just make a few announcements for all of us here. This is going to be live streamed up there, so all of you that have cell phones and all those, let's set those to airplane or something where you're not going to have disturbances. The restrooms are located over across the parking lot at the visitor center. Otherwise, I'm going to invite you to put your hands together and welcome Denise. Thank you.
So first of all, I just want to say I am so grateful and honored. Is it the box?
Okay, it's on.
I'm on. Okay.
All right.
So I just want to pause and take the moment to say on my way up here, I made sure I stopped along the ocean and I was really tuning in to this beautiful day and this time with all of you, because we don't know who we're going to meet, when we're going to meet different people, and it's just such an honor to be here at the Wayfarers Chapel. So thank you. And I want to make sure we take some time to pause. Gratitude is so important for everything we do, and I want to thank Emanuel Swedenborg and all the Ascended Masters and everyone that I feel is here in spirit with us today, in the material realm and the non-material realm. And a little bit about who I am. So I'm an adult and child psychiatrist. I'm passionate about bridging science, spirituality, and psychiatry. I followed my own inner voice, and I was very, very fortunate and blessed to speak at the Dalai Lama's Body, Mind, Life Conference in Dharamshala last October. So the presentation that I'm giving today, I just want to kind of share my experience when I was invited to do this talk. It was like, who was my audience going to be in Dharamshala? And it turned out they were 16-year-olds, Buddhist monks, diplomats, people that spoke only Tibetan, only other languages. And then I had to say to myself, how do I do a presentation on nurturing children's mental health that can really kind of bridge different realms? And so I want to just, with gratitude and humility, share this presentation with all of you because it's a labor of love for me. So first of all, that's the conference. And then what I've done, which I'm so proud to be here with Wayfarers Chapel, I love that we're doing this live stream because we're living at a time where we can share our thoughts, feelings, and actions, not only in person, but with a wider audience. So I made myself kind of go over that, I don't know what you call it, you know how we all have our own fears and our different cliffs to go through. So I've been sharing these ideas of bridging science, spirituality, and psychiatry, and changing the way we think, talk, and act about mental health via social media. And so prior to this Dr. Denise fancy DNA and everything that's on the screen, I've been in private practice, loving what I do. I'm also an adoptive mother. But this presentation and being here with you is validation of oneness and unity. Because when I wrote my spiritual mission statement in 2014, I asked, please attract all different light workers of different ages, different cultural backgrounds, so we can come together and share all these beautiful messages. So I thank you just for even being here today, okay? So remember, this is the slides I wanted to make sure I conveyed in India. Now I'm here with you. I wanted to express, this is my son and I adopted my son at birth. He's full of energy and charisma, and I feel like children are our biggest teachers. And this is a bunch of thank yous in all different languages, because I think gratitude is so important for nurturing mental health. So to nurture, what does that even mean? We use that word all the time. And it's a sense of nurturing, caring, loving, attaching. Words are so powerful, but so are our actions and so are our feelings. And in mental health, we really have to remember that our emotional, our physical, and our spiritual well-being define mental health. Here in the West, and especially I'm a Western-trained psychiatrist in child and adult psychiatry, and oftentimes when people hear the word psychiatry, they think I'm just going to like whip out a prescription pad and just it's all about the neurotransmitters, and that's only one piece of the puzzle. And so the whole concept of nurturing children's mental health is a spiritual, emotional, and physical process to get a being. We're human beings having a spiritual experience, and I think that's something that needs to be remembered when we're talking about nurturing mental health. And by the way, we're talking about children, but I think it's for all of us. This talk is about children and adults too. So worldwide, 10 to 20% of children experience mental health issues. It was about 40 to 50 years ago when we started really looking at how important children are. So much of Western medicine and the way we think about nurturing was all about the adults. And then we started realizing the power of early intervention, programs, prevention. I'm all about thinking, how can we all thrive? Did you know this? Did you know that 50% of lifelong mental health issues start before age 14? 75% before age 24. So we really need to have prevention. Awareness. This is why I'm so excited to be here. I'm actually getting chills. Thank you, Emmanuel. Awareness is something that throughout all the millennial, all of the different ascended masters have been talking about, all the different, if you study living world religions, if you study science, we have to have a level of awareness, physical and emotional, so we can have incredible mental health. So it starts with awareness. Meditation is mind medicine. This is the key, the tool to getting ourselves to awareness. And so can you imagine a world where our children, this is being integrated in preschools, in schools. We are incredibly fortunate here on the West Coast because a lot of our children are being exposed to this. But I grew up in the Midwest, in the Chicago area, and I know that these programs, like there's programs that I'm going to talk about, Goldie Hawn's program, Mind Up, they're being integrated into the school systems. So my son, who's at Pacific in Manhattan Beach, he told me all about the amygdala. He was learning about awareness. And also I'm his mom, so we kind of have like a little deal there about awareness too. So I really believe, and I actually like to say that I prescribe mindfulness and meditation. And before I go to the next slide, I think the word meditation, for many of my, I'll say clients or patients, because I work with all ages, when I talk to them about how important meditation is, a lot of people go, oh my gosh, I can't do that, because they think it's just going om and like being on vacation or something. But we can integrate, like even just being here with all of you, like this is the only moment we have, right? We can be mindful right in this moment. We can be mindful when we listen to our favorite song. We can be mindful when we take a bike ride. I literally, the old me probably 10 years ago would have been like, oh my goodness, I'm giving the talk at Wayfarers Chapel, But today I got here like early, I took time along the ocean, I was looking at the rain and the sun, and then I was thinking, who am I going to meet at this conference today? And so that is awareness. And if we can teach our children and teach ourselves that we're so powerful if we can live in this moment, because I think different words have different meanings. And for some of my patients that have ADHD, because that's very much something that a child psychiatrist works with, when I say the word meditation, it's like they actually almost are like, oh my gosh, I can't sit still. And so I talk with them about riding their bikes, doing yoga, dancing, singing, because I think there's so many ways to be aware. So I love this. I know that from a spiritual standpoint, and studies of the East have known this for such a long time, but we're incredibly fortunate. We have MRI studies at Harvard that were done. This one wonderful woman, Dr. Sarah Lazar, if you want to look her up, she was recovering from an injury and started doing yoga. And she realized how much more her healing was happening, how calm she felt, and she actually changed her whole PhD program and started measuring the differences that you can see on MRI studies in the brain with people who had never meditated before. Just after 8 weeks, what we can now see, because I know much of what the Western world needs to see things. That's the material world versus the post-material world, the linear world versus the quantum world. And so for the people who need to see it to believe it, this is incredible that we're having studies at Harvard done that show, this is the one after 8 weeks, that it showed thickening of areas in the brain that correlate with improvement after meditation. Self-relevance, learning, cognition, memory, emotional regulation, perspective taking, empathy, and compassion. And then the area of the brain, the amygdala, which is associated with fear, it was smaller in the meditators, just in that short a period of time. Okay, I love this. This is ripples of kindness make waves of change. And so we ask ourselves, how are we going to nurture mental health? How are we going to foster this sense of awareness and love and kindness? And I think when we integrate that into our homes, into our schools, into our gardens, this is a little cute rock garden at Pacific Elementary, and all the kids had to put little rocks to think about kindness. And at the school, which is really neat, they have like responsibility lane, caring lane, and on Wednesdays they now have this kind of spirit rally, and they sing the song, they get kindness awards, acts of kindness awards, and then they also get awards for walking to school and also recycling. So I'm getting chills when I say this, because this is the kind of stuff that could make such change for all of us. If it's integrated, it's so simple, right? But we just need to remember to do it. And we can do that at our homes too, right? Okay, so after all my studies of consciousness, Darwin, Buddha, Yashua, it's all really, if we think about it, we've got big key steps to nurturing mental health. Number one, awareness. And number two, we have to have a level of self-love. That's a big foundation for our mental health and for our inner peace and positive mindset. And so we can make it really simple. People, whether they believe in a higher power, whether they're religious or spiritual, but just teaching children, how can we be our own best friend? If we teach that at a young age, because not every kid is cut out for academics, right? Some people, they think school is like, I'm just going to be vulnerable and make it fun. My son, he's verbally so bright. I adopted him at birth, and his verbal skills are way higher than what he can show the world because of his energy level and some dysgraphia. So when I pick him up from school, he goes behind the bar. He's like, "Mom, you're breaking me out of prison." And so he's such a character. He's so dramatic, right? And so and I always encourage him, like, what gives you joy? What makes you happy? And he's incredible. He's learning something called Kung Flow. Maybe he'll come here and help me with a lecture one time. He's learning like a martial arts based on 3,000-year-old Egyptian staff fighting. And he's learning how to do that. And what's happening is he's crossing over midline. So it's helping connect the hemispheres of his brain. He's so coordinated at it. You've seen him literally from a consciousness standpoint level up. And his teacher is teaching him the way he learns and the way he thinks. So I think one of the things that's modern day that I believe that's happening, because I see so many children that get referred to me with ADHD, and I'm just going to share this because this is my know the audience thing to share, is a lot of the children that are being born on Earth, this is my, I would say, scientific method that we need to kind of prove over time. I think if we're all human, but we're souls as well, I think a lot of the children that are being born are vibrating at a different frequency of awareness. And we know this because we're having more children with autism, more people with telepathy, more intuition. And so a lot of the old school ways, we can't catch up to the way a lot of the kids learn. So I know it's going to take some time for us to integrate and really empower our children, but it's so important, and this is for all of us in the room. It doesn't matter if we're a child. We have to ask ourselves, what gives us the most joy? What gives us the most happiness? How can we be our own best friend? And Reverend Brown, I've told you, I'm a universe geek too, so like that gives me a lot of joy. Like when I was arriving here and I heard him talking about dreams and the soul, I was like, oh my gosh. And so it's good when we know what makes us happy. And I think that's one of the things that I think modern day society is very frenetic. It's about material things. I think if we can really help our children to realize that peace of mind, being their own best friend, and what gives them joy. Those are simple comments that you can weave in to your teachings, whether it's preschool, schools, television. I think it's very important. Okay, so here we go. This is the foundation that I've talked about, just that awareness and self-love set the stage for inner peace and healthy mindset. And then this is really important. When individuals thrive, we all thrive. And that is the concept of oneness and one humanity. Everything's a ripple effect. We know from, well, I'm just going to say I'm very, very blessed and fortunate. I took the time, I don't know if many of you know about remote viewing. How many people in the audience know about remote viewing? Yeah, so from a pure just desire, because when you're an MD, if you say things, you need to back it up with experience or science. And so I wanted to make sure on this path of bridging science and spirituality and psychiatry that I did my work. So I was very fortunate to spend a week with someone who was a nurse and then for 30 years as a parapsychologist, and she's one of the first women who started the Institute of Remote Viewing, one of the only women of Institute of Remote Viewing with a lot of the main scientists at the time of the Cold War, the quantum physicists. So I wanted to go away and train in when you have just an envelope with some coordinates, you have 45 minutes to kind of get your own awareness drops, because we have more senses than just the 5 senses. And so I did that for the whole week, and you open up the envelopes and you see how close you are. And this is information that was either a picture or a story or something at a different time that I had never seen before. And so the reason why I'm sharing this is that what modern day society is not fully realizing is the power of our energy fields. That you're an individual, but we're all our own universes, and then we're all interconnected. And that is incredibly powerful. We're going to talk about it a little bit longer when we think about the power of social media, the power of texting, that there's unseen energy exchange of love, kindness, fear, or betrayal. So these simple ideas, much like when we're kids we learn about if you get caught on fire, stop, drop, and roll. I would like kids to really understand that when individuals thrive, we all thrive, and why that is. It's not just to kind of get your next best marketing thing or like to kind of one-up people. So there's one thing that I'm going to say right now is I think in the West, because I had to give this talk in the East, we as Americans are thought of as survival of the fittest. You think of Darwin that way. But his book that he really wanted to be remembered by was more of the altruism, the descent of man. And so that is, if you're your own best friend and you're thriving, that has a ripple effect to others. And if we can get these simple concepts taught at a very young age in a way that's not necessarily putting any belief system, but just in a very rounded way with spirituality, science, and psychology, I think it would be fantastic for prevention. So then, of course, I was in India giving this talk, and they wanted to know about what Western medicine, how I practice as a psychiatrist. So we're trained to take the biological, psychological, and social approach, but I really, over the years of my own levels of awareness opening up, integrate spiritual as well as cultural. And when I say the word spiritual, it's such a broad word. I think it's really important whether we're a minister, a teacher, a psychiatrist, an MD, when someone comes to us for help, we have to know our audience. It's sort of a rule of the universe to meet someone where they're at. So I do my Western medicine assessment, but I integrate because I tune in. And when I say tune in, like before I have an appointment, I kind of think, I try to think and have like a pre-idea of what are they going to ask me, even more than what they told me at the phone. So it's not just connecting with their words that they tell me, it's their energy field. And so depending on how much someone might believe in eternity or the soul or whatnot will determine how much and when I integrate that kind of information into the work I do. And I think if we did more of this in all of our areas of life, teaching, preaching, everything, if you realize that there's an unseen energy exchange, not just the here and now, I think it's really powerful for healing and for thriving. Oh, so when I say biological, this is just second nature for me. So biological would be, does someone have a predisposition genetically to anxiety, depression, schizophrenia, bipolar, because I'm a psychiatrist, ADHD, learning issues, and so I'll make sure I do lab panels to check that, to make sure someone's thyroid's okay, their endocrine system's fine, that they don't have any other medical issues that could influence or affect their mental health. And then psychological, are there any current stressors going on, any family problems, any learning or school issues, any losses? And then social, are the kids getting bullied at school? Is there something going on with the child-teacher dynamic? Because I've actually had teachers that have bullied kids. It happens. You don't want to think about it. And then the other things that we've mentioned. And so it's really important that we get the genetic history, the family history, physical exam, lab work, and everything I just said. And then psychological, home life, family financial, family health, divorce, any family dynamics. Social. So social interactions are so crucial for our children. And once they start getting from the preteen to the teenage, they start caring so much more about what other people think. And there's this incredible book that I would highly recommend. It's one of my colleagues. It's actually on my website too. It's called Born to be Wild. And one of my colleagues, I did my child psychiatry at UCLA, Dr. Jess Shatkin, did this labor of love book. It's beautiful. He's at NYU. He's very much a visionary, what he's done with the program there. And the social interaction back over 100, 150 years ago, we weren't living as long as we live. So why is there so much peer pressure? It's the survival of the fittest. At that time, people were picking a spouse, trying to one-up each other. Who's going to get that woman? Who's going to create this family? And so peer pressure is very real. And the book is so amazing, Born to be Wild, because it gives some of the scientific studies on what social media can do. There was actually MRI studies done at UCLA where they had children. They thought they were playing against one another, but they were playing against the computer. And when they were winning versus losing, different areas of the brain that were correlating with pain lit up. So our children, by playing and being around, whether it's their social media, being bullied on the schoolyard, that can really affect their mental health and also their physical pain. So it's incredibly important when our children are on social media, playing any video games, that there's some level of self-regulation. And for me, I don't know how many people have kids in the room, but my son, I'm really fortunate that I pick him up from school like 4 days a week, because that's like the time of day when the kids tell you what happened on the schoolyard, and then I try to make sure he has a good snack. He doesn't like homework, so I have to get through that. I'm going to be honest with you. Practicing mindfulness is just, I feel like our children are such our own teachers that he's taught me a lot about taking a deep breath before I hear like how he feels about homework. And also like which friends to have over. So I think when we're really present as grandparents, aunts, in any way we're working with children, to remember how important their environment is and who they hang out with. Social. This is really crucial. 20% of kids that are cyberbullied think about suicide, and 1 in 10 attempt it. There was a time in 2016, I kind of go through spikes in my practice where there's times where people are in greater crisis. I just had one in the last 8 weeks. I had 7 different people that were suicidal. And a lot of the times there's the genetic predisposition, maybe depression, bipolar, substance use. But a lot of the big triggers that kind of tip people off is not being treated in a kind way. Whether that's at work, I've had adults that come to see me where they've been not treated well in management positions. I've had children who are being ostracized on the playground, and I've had people actually where they've been doing so much bullying online that the feds needed to get involved. And so this is very real. And I think what happened was society, we got the technology faster than we knew how to educate people on the importance of self-regulation, self-efficacy, kindness, and love. So this is very, very important. I think this isn't something, I think it's starting to happen more in training now. I did my undergrad in med school at Creighton, which is a Jesuit university. Then I was at Emory for my adult psychiatry and UCLA for child psychiatry. Very fortunate to have such amazing training. But at the time when I was in training, it was like the time of the brain, all the sexiness with like MRIs and like serotonin, dopamine, And I mean, those are real scientific findings. I value my Western medicine and scientific training. However, my own growth, I've now been in practice since 2001. I've seen 40,000 hours of patient care. The real human experience, the energy field, and even, I know that this audience might be different than another audience, but the concept of eternity and energy fields living for eternity, if you look at some of the literature on near-death experiences and also people that talk about their past lives. I'm just going to share this really interesting clinical situation. I had someone who came to me with severe anxiety, attention issues, and as a doctor, you have to sort of say, which is the target thing that we're going to work on first? I get the family involvement, I get rating scales, I get all the information. So we started moving through her wellness. She had therapy, she was on the right meds that helped her anxiety, she did need meds. I'm very much not the quick one to whip out that prescription pad, but this was a situation where that was one of the tools that was needed. And then I just had this feeling, and I know her belief system was strong because she had this fear of going to bed at night. And I just had this intuition, like maybe this wasn't from this lifetime, because she had like a trauma that we don't know, that we haven't in this lifetime, we've never known that she had this specific trauma. And I won't say what it is because I just want to really respect all the people that come to see me. So I said to her, what if? And I said, I'm not an expert, I haven't done the hypnosis where I have people go under, but I've done the scientific research on it, and I've experienced it. What if that didn't happen in this lifetime? And for her immediately, she's like, yep, that's it. Her own inner voice. So we had the combination of the Western world and then the possibility, because we know that if we've had trauma in this current lifetime, when we master the trauma by doing good things, forgiveness, there's a whole dialectical behavioral therapy that integrates cognitive behavioral therapy and mindfulness, we can heal from traumas from this lifetime. But what if there's also some unresolved soul stuff? And so people can turn to spiritual leaders, they can do past life regressions if that's something that they're open to. Not everyone's open to that. And I've decided to stay in my Western medicine costume. We call them costumes when we're having different life human experiences. And so I think it's really important that I have read the research and that I try to point people in the right direction. And that's another example of using your own calibration when you're sitting with someone. You have to decide, is that appropriate or is that not? And then you have to check in with them as part of their healing. So this is incredibly important. Incredibly important. When I was in training, it was thought that genetics and environment were like a 50-50 split. All the different kind of progressive quantum healing, post-material science. And when I say post-material science, we have the material science of the Newtonian, and then we have the post-material, which integrates the concepts of quantum physics. So what we're now really realizing is that epigenetics, which is the influence of our outer world, our thoughts, our feelings, our actions, I'm going to go through this with some slides, our nutrition, our sleep, everything around is influencing our material DNA, and we can have outcomes that are much more successful. Because a lot of times people think, oh, my family history has alcoholism, my family history has ADHD or depression, almost like you're going to then give birth. Like the way that the linear mind works is we have these expectations. And it doesn't mean that that's not part of the information for part of a self-understanding, but we know that 80 to 90% of our physical and mental health is influenced by our thoughts, feelings, and actions. And we can look at Bruce Lipton. He's an incredible science, way ahead of his game. Larry Dossey. These are all incredible people that have been in integrative medicine. Dr. Judith Orloff. I just want to make sure, I won't be able to list everyone's names, but I'm all about gratitude, because a lot of people at different times in history push the envelope and bring different science and bridge spirituality and psychology so we can all have a better life and thrive. So here we go. Here are some of the ingredients that we hear about. So important for mental health. Good sleep. In fact, you know how there's trends in society, like sleep is like the new this, with Ariana Huffington. But she's right. The more we sleep, the more we can heal. It's also really important. I'm sure you're probably going to have speakers that talk about dreams and things, but when you sleep, and you sleep in a really good way, you allow yourself to go through deeper stages of REM sleep and actually dream and process things. So exercise. One of my colleagues, I love to just mention people that I respect, is Dr. Beth Frades. She's at Harvard, and she's a lifestyle medicine specialist. And so we know from what doctors are trying to do now as prevention that 75 minutes a week of more intense exercise where you're a little bit short of breath is what's recommended, or 150 minutes of like walking, hiking, swimming. That's for optimal physical and then mental health. Good nutrition. I'm going to go through some of the slides. Literacy and parental family loves acts of compassion. So I'm going to kind of go into these topics a little bit more. Okay, so for sleep, you can just look at this. For infants, you want to get 12 to 16 hours. Children, 1 to 2 years of age should sleep 11 to 14 hours. 3 to 5-year-olds, 10 to 13 hours, 6 to 12-year-olds, 9 to 12, and then teenagers, 8 to 10 hours. Because I want to be inclusive, I know this is nurturing children's mental health, but as we age, we need less sleep. So sometimes when we get past like 60, it might be 6 to 7 hours. It's less. Okay, so children, we want children to exercise for at least 60 minutes a day. And that's usually, back in the day, we didn't have to have all this extra funding. A lot of times, physical education was integrated into the schools. But that's something that we really need to be strong proponents of, to make sure that that happens, because so many of the children are logging on to their Fortnite or logging on to their video games, and they're not moving as much as they need to be moving. So omega-3, so there's this incredible, I love, by the way, a lot of this is on my website, drDeniseMD.com, but Dr. Lori Shemek, I ask my people that I respect that are like visionaries in nutrition, she talks about omega-3 making it easier for serotonin, the happy transmitter, to find it in its ways to cells, which make us feel good. Also, we know, this is going to be on another slide, the importance of a plant-based diet, lots of nuts, lots of berries. We're really talking about an anti-inflammation nutrition plan. We're talking about the least amount of sugar, processed foods. A lot of us here in the audience, I was raised in the time of fat-free, fat-free. Everything was like those little snack packs and you thought you were so good. And so now we know that, and who knows what it's going to be in 20 years. Hopefully we've got it this time where it's really the anti-inflammation with sugar. But we know that in anti-inflammation, less sugar is better. And I'm seeing that in our schools. They don't allow, I think this is a little bit militant, because I think that whenever you have this all or nothing thinking about something, people go into deprivation backlash. If you tell someone, no, you can't have it, then they want it 10 times more. So remember, if 80 to 90% of the time you're making good choices with your nutrition, with your fitness, with your spiritual practice, you're still on path. A lot of people do this, oh no, I blew my diet, and then they go for 5 days being mad at themselves or that they didn't do their workout. And so we have to also remember to have flexibility in our thinking when we're making good nutrition choices. So here we go, we just talked about that. And notice my slides are very pure. Remember that my talk got translated from English into Tibetan. So I didn't add as many of these stories that I'm doing now. So this is a very kind of precise, anti-inflammation is mind medicine, low sugar, plant-based. Of course, the monks are looking at me like, duh, we're vegetarian. So anyways, I'm just being fun. Okay, and so then we talked about this too, about preventing childhood obesity. We want to limit the TV. We want to stock the kitchen with healthy foods, high calorie, but we want to limit access to high calorie foods, and we want the quality of the food to be good. And we can teach our children simple things, like less sugar is better. But we don't need to say no sugar. I think if you say mostly, then you're teaching kids adaptive thinking, because the mind is so powerful. Our words are so powerful. So if we teach kids, like when individuals thrive, we all thrive. Mostly no sugar. Let's get this amount of exercise. It seems within reason. And it also teaches a child to be kinder and more loving to themselves. Oh, one thing too is one of my friends that's really great at cooking and that's a nutritionist talks about engaging children in going to the grocery store, going to Trader Joe's, going to farmers markets, helping them learn a couple simple recipes before they go off to college. Oh, water. Water is so incredibly important for mental health and physical health. In fact, my son's Kung Fu teacher really wanted him, because my son has some sensory issues, and so he doesn't even like water, but we got alkalinized water. And that's been really good for his hydration, and it's really good because some of the kids that are being born are a little sensitive to different foods, textures, and so we want to make sure that we're all well hydrated. Okay, this is unbelievable, the importance of literacy. So it's so important to read to our children between birth and age to 5. The more a child gets books or borrows them, the more they're going to stay in school longer. One of my dear friends, she's on my side, her name's Chris Helene Bridge. She wrote this beautiful book, it's called The Same Heart. And it's a book, what she does is she integrates literacy with spiritual lessons. And this book is called The Same Heart. And what she did is she had children. It's so cool. It's also about tolerance and love. And you can teach this in schools. The book gives an exercise to teachers or parents about different paint colors that you have to match your own skin color. And then the book is all children's artwork. So it's carrying their vibrational frequency of learning about love and tolerance. And so I think making reading fun, making literacy fun, having kids make up stories, finding their interest is going to keep them reading, even if they have learning issues. My own son's verbally very bright, but he loves to figure things out. Like he said, Mom, I can't remember what to say, Mom, I'm going to learn how to hack this. And I'm thinking, well, if he reads more, anything to get him to read or get that computer magazine, I'm like, he sure can do something when he's going after the end point. So we want to engage our children however we can in reading to keep them in school longer. Oh, I don't know why they made these words so close together, but there's different parenting styles, and this goes back to that book that I told you about, Born to be Wild by Dr. Josh Shatkin. The book goes over the literature that authoritative versus authoritarian is a much more kinder and gentle parenting style. I think that I know when I was growing up it was no, because I said so. And there was no room for me to have like a discussion. Now, I'm not judging it. I mean, I think I turned out pretty good with the more authoritarian style. But we know that the authoritative, which is kind, firm limits, where communication is open. I'm finding a lot of the children that are being born right now, because I work with ages 4 up to 80, these kids, it's like their soul's saying, well, who are you? Like, why do I have to listen to you? So a lot of people are perceiving children as being more oppositional, and there is some influence because of social media. They're a little more precocious because they're being exposed to things, and they think they're like little know-it-alls. But I also think, this is my own thinking and my experience clinically, a lot of the souls being born on the planet right now are like so connected to Source. They're like, why are you that much more important than me? And so I find this authoritative with my own son. When I explain things to him and say, I'm your mother, this is my job. I have to make sure you get to school. I have to make sure you put your glasses on. I'm not trying to ruin your morning. I know you don't love school, but it's against the law for you to not go to school. So see, back in the day, my own parents would just be like, get those glasses on, da-da-da-da-da, brr. And I find that with my own son, when by the way, I have to do a lot of mindfulness to do this. I literally pray in the morning, I take a deep breath, and I'm like, are you kidding me? Can't he just put his glasses on? Can't he just pack that bag? But I think when kids are really bright and they feel connected and that you care about them, and you give them the reason, the kind and firm limits, that's an incredible parenting style. It's not always the easiest thing to do, by the way. So I think what's so important, and we've talked about the ingredients for mental health, we've talked about awareness, we've talked about self-love, and we've talked about all the kind of material ways to achieve this. But then when we're thriving, but back to that, when individuals thrive, we all thrive. I think it's so important to integrate acts of kindness, acts of charity, compassion into our schools and into situations where there's all different cultures involved, and having tolerance, discussing things. It's really interesting because children, it's so funny, it's like we're on earth and then we forget some of the things that we know when we're so pure, right? Like, just as a fun example, on Martin Luther King Day, my son, I adopted him at birth. His birth mom and I know each other. She's very fair-skinned like I am, and we think, his birth dad's definitely got some other background. So my son's so cute. He's like, Mom, at the time of Martin Luther King, I could go in both bathrooms. Isn't that the sweetest? Because kids are already thinking of oneness and love, and like it's all inclusive, right? So I think children are naturally often open to kindness and acts of charity, but we need to reinforce that in our schools and in the way we talk to people, even simple things. Like, I try to make sure when we're at Target, when we're in line, I make sure I whisper to my son, like, make eye contact, because I think this generation's so on their electronics. And I'm like, make sure you ask that person how their day is. Smile. That makes that's like an act of making that person feel better, that they matter. They're not just checking, everyone matters. Everyone has a purpose. So I think as parents, as teachers, as uncles, aunts, we can really influence our children in all kinds of ways. Okay, this is something I shared that example of integrating material science and post-material science into treatment plans. This is something that I'm hoping over time is going to be more universal, that we are bridging what we know from integrative medicine and the pioneers and our spiritual leaders, the Dalai Lama, and everyone talking about the importance of the unseen energy, happiness, kindness, love, compassion, the possibility of the soul being eternal. And I think if we integrate our understanding of the material world, of biological, psychological, social, with the concept of eternity and unseen vibrational frequency, we're going to be healthier as individuals, healthier as a planet, and it's going to have a ripple effect environmentally and socially for all of us. So we talked about epigenetics already, but just to review, it's it's known as like the new science of self-empowerment, and then it's the control above genetics. And when you think about it, that's really kind of the bridge when we were talking about each of us being individual universes. If we look at all sentient beings, the plants, and everything as one big organism, we really have such an influence on one another. Whether we make the choice to have something from the farmer's market versus something else is going to influence so much of the environment, right? And it's the same thing, if we're being kind and loving to someone, we can brighten their day. And so this is where the linear language, I think, sometimes is so precise. Like, it's either you're this or you're that. I like to use the words paradigm progression, because every bit of incredible knowledge that we have or human experience builds on itself. So we want to respect and honor Newtonian physics, and we want to then bridge that with quantum physics. A lot of times when you have scientists debating things, someone that's going to go head in head with a quantum physicist and Newtonian-based kind of more material, you have to have some humility and gratitude for all perceptions of thinking, whether it's in science, whether it's in religion. And so I'm really excited about where we're at as humankind. I also want to say, I'm excited for those who are awake at this time in history to realize how important kindness and love is, and that it has a ripple effect. And we need to do our part, each and one of us, to kind of remember that. And this ties in with the epigenetics, because everything influences each other. It's not as much a 50-50 where they're thinking genetics and environment. It's really the 80 to 90% of your environment affects our material health and well-being. Okay, this is one of my favorite words. One of my friends at Harvard, she wants me to coin it, but I'm like, I'm not in the ego thing, but I've been talking about the word neurostyle, and I do need to kind of go for it. Because one of my big passions is changing the way we think, talk, and act about mental health. Because when people come to see me, of course, I'm a Western medicine trained doctor. I might have someone with major depression, schizophrenia, bipolar, and I honor science, that there's certain qualitative things, we have the science, but I think people need to remember that even if we have that linear and material understanding of what's going on, that we can influence our own outcome to thrive by the things that we just said. So when I give my patients, I have to give them this insurance form so they can go get reimbursement, and I cannot stand the word disorder when talking about mental health, because I talk about wellness versus illness. It doesn't mean I don't validate someone when they're suicidal or depressed, but then I like to give a new language system that's a healing language system. And I like to say the word neurostyle. And then I define that with them, like, you're John with this, this, and this, and I'm grateful for my Western medicine understanding, but it doesn't mean you're not going to thrive and have the best outcome. And then I take it one step further, and I refer them to Joe Dispenza's work, You Are the Placebo. I don't know if anyone's familiar. Is anyone familiar with his work? Joe had a spinal injury, and he decided to forego the Western medicine recommendation of surgery, and he healed his own self through the power of mind and his own quantum healing. So I like to point to people different, like, unbelievable situations. They have tools that they can add to their own healing process, right? And so this is the kind of integration I do as a doctor. I do what I need to do as a Western medicine, but I want people to feel empowered. You don't want to walk out of an office feeling like you've got 5 different diagnoses, your world's over, you're being thrown these prescriptions. By the way, I'm not against, remember, neutrality. Everything's a tool in the toolbox. Because a lot of people come in with prejudgments of shame, right? There's a lot of shame around mental health. And so that's why the word neurostyle, I like to use it on my podcast, I like to use it when I'm talking to people. I quickly shift. I do what I need to do as a physician, and then I want to shift into the healing mode and helping someone to have their own sense of healing and empowerment. And I say to them, you are the one who decided to come here. You're the one who knew you were suffering. You're the one who wants to get sober. You're the one who had the courage to tell your mom you wanted to kill yourself, right? This is real. And then I like to go to the neurostyle part, because people really, these labels help us, but if we land on them, we can land on them so much that we're stuck in a sick mindset instead of a healthy and wellness mindset. And then this is my definition of neurostyle, that we all process and perceive information in our own unique way. And this, think about it, this goes for every possible sentient being in the universe, okay? So I wanted to come up with a word that was very universal, so we could be open-minded that sentient beings, whether you're an animal, a human being, that we all have different ways that we process and perceive our environment. We all have different levels of awareness. We talked about this already, but mindfulness, that focusing, if we could integrate programs of mindfulness, kindness, empowerment into our schools, into our homes, like the movement's happening, but really do it not as a trend, do it because you believe in it, and really educate your children and educate yourselves about being in this moment right now. That's my son. He was visiting his dad's work, and they had a meditation room, and I didn't tell him to do that picture. He's like hilarious. He's like a comedian with it, like, oh, Mom, I'm meditating. Look, Mom. So that's my son, Kieran, and he's my biggest teacher. And I do believe our children, that's the other thing. We're talking about how we as adults can nurture children's mental health. I like to listen to what he has to say, because I believe that when we have children, we're traveling through time with a tribe energetically, right? Where they're here to teach us too. And he told me, someone like, Mom, that guy looks suspicious. And he was right. And I didn't listen to him. And I told him, and so he feels so proud now that his superpowers, that he's more street smart. And I tell him that Mom acts too much like it's heaven on earth. It's so true. It's like, I like to tell him like my strengths and my weaknesses, and that could be your strength and weakness, right? He's like, well, I'm more street smart than you. I'm like, yes, you are. Okay, and then here, these are my hashtags. I wanted to just be very universal. So on my at Dr. Denise MD on Twitter, Facebook, and now I'm starting to do Instagram, I really try to add one humanity, inspire all, and I like to capitalize the I and then the ALL for when individuals thrive, we all thrive, and then all sentient beings, and then one love. And then one of my groups of people on social media are really advocates for talking more about mental health. I've interviewed them on my podcast. And this woman, Rebecca Lombardo, she started the hashtag Keep Talking MH, keep talking about mental health. So I thank you all for your time today and being here with me.
Thank you, Denise. Thank you, everyone that's been joining us virtually. And do you still have a few moments to have question and answer? We'll maybe conclude the formal streaming part now. Thanks.
Great. Does anyone have questions or shares?